Uh, we would like to start the next presentation with Andrej from Red Hat. So, Andrej, please take over.
Okay. Dobar dan. Good morning. My name is Andrzej Kowalczyk. I'm a Red Hat employee. So I will tell you a little bit about API management. I know that Red Hat is the most famous from Fedora and Red Hat Linux, but Red Hat is not only Linux. Red Hat has much more to offer. For example, a few years ago, we took over JBoss company, open source middleware company. This is previous our acquisition. I said previous because last week we took over another commercial company. If you are interested in developing application, cloud-ready application, please go to Code Envy and find our new acquisition. This is commercial company, and we are doing open sourcing. So this product, API management, is open sourcing now. So it means that we are reviewing code, we are trying to unlock our code against some patents and so on. And our last acquisition is Code Envy, cloud-ready platform, development platform for application. So this is our business model. We are acquiring company, and then we publish code. Some people say it cannot work, but it works. So we are also a commercial open source company, and this our acquisition, previous acquisition, is completely oriented to API management. What is API and API economy? Sometimes even you heard not even API economy, but API first approach. What does it mean? Have you saw lots of funny movies like America First about Trump and other countries? So now it's not America First, now it's API first. So we should start to build your application from exposing of APIs, or thinking about APIs. So this is new age, new era of API. But why we are talking about API economy? Because API drives a world, commercial world. For example, Amazon, eBay are selling more via API than via regular web page. How it's done? Many developers using that API, eBay API or Amazon API, they create application, mobile application. So now I'm in Zagreb. My wife at 2nd of June had an anniversary, date of birth. So when I want to buy for her present, I will not choose, for example, delivery by parcel service. I will choose service when I can pick up the parcel at home, close to the home shop, at kiosk. And a lot of people are writing similar application. But API economy is much, much far. What does it mean? API economy is when you are creating application, when you use more than at least one API vendor, API provider. For example, there are many mobile applications. Uber, for example. They're using not just Uber API, but also Google API, Google Maps API. Not all APIs are for free. You have to remember. So, what we need to create API economy? We need API. There are most popular APIs, like Facebook API, like LinkedIn API, just to create authentication and authorization services. They are exposing API with open source, open standard way, like OAuth, OpenID Connect. And also, for example, Google API. It is for free for me as a personal user. But if you want to use Google Maps API in commercial way, you have to pay them. For example, 200,000 per day is for free, but 200,001 will be rejected. You have to pay for it. Why they need money? Because it costs them. It costs power, it costs cooling, air conditioning, energy, and so on. They have to buy sometimes licenses, new servers. So for free, it's not commercial usage. Like for me, I would check maybe 10 times a day Google Maps. But for others, they have to pay. There is also a very famous service API in the United States, US Post. They have a database with all public and all addresses in the United States. And they are obliged by the law to expose those information. So they expose API. You can validate address. Is it proper address in the United States? Me, I can validate for free. But they create another paid service, and they're collecting money for it. Who is using this API? Parcel logistic companies. Because for them, it's better to pay, for example, lump sum, like $1,000 per month, and validate address than to serve undelivered parcel. Because it's much, much higher, much, much more expensive than to pay US Post for this service, this API. When we are talking about API, we can start exposing our API like you see on this picture. On the left-hand side, you see. This is just gate. Gate to your company, gate to your school, to your university. We call it naked API. You cannot control anything. You cannot control person, traffic. You cannot authorize any person. Just put doors between gates, and you have a control. On the right-hand side, you see API management. This is not revolving doors. This is lock. When you want to come in to the company, to the building, you have to scan your iris, or you have to put your finger to scan your fingertips. This is lock. This is API management. So you can control who is allowed to come into your company and who is not. With this control, we call it managed API. So you can control traffic, and you can control security. We see now huge demand from the banks and finance. There is a new deregulation project called PSD2, and there is also Open Bank project. This is open source project. You can please go to openbankproject.com, and you can see many definitions of APIs for banks. Banks can download definition of those services, of those APIs. There is a sandbox, there are other things. But behind this project, there is an idea not just exposing services by bank and finance institution, but to share, to create visibility for transfers. So you can publish your transfer. For example, I can publish my transfer for a mobile phone, for energy and gas, but I want to hide other, for example, my private spendings. So you can see all transfers with this bank project. There are some nice applications, so you can control, this is Sphere, you can control how money are flowing on the world. So you can use this for API. Last week, I had a meeting with the banks and fintech, and one guy from fintech said, PSD2 is the biggest deregulation for banks. So all TPPs, third-party provider, could use the API. But this is the biggest regulation for fintech company, because banks are forced to expose their business services. This is a huge wave for API on the bank side. PSD2, as I said, this is the regulation for banks. This is the pre-regulation date. You know the deadline for it is end of January 2018. And after January 2018, you will see such a picture like on the right-hand side. So between bank and you could be TPP, could be mobile operator. So then you can pay with your mobile phone. You could have one mobile application for online banking, not just dedicated mobile banking application delivered by single particular bank. This is the completely, it will deregulate the market. But this is not just exposing all functionality. It touches only transfers and some information about account. It could create API economy. Why? For example, when I will find something on the web page, on the eShop, I can choose this product, and then I can pay it. Now I will connect to the bank. I will touch I will type it login and password, and when the transfer is done, via API, this eShop could collect information about my address from account. So I don't have to type it once again, my home address, and the parcel will be delivered to my home address. So this is the value for me. It will save my time and money with this deregulation. There is also a new idea, maybe not so new, but I see there like a second stage of the API, Open API. What is the Open API? It's usually touch public institutions. So all public institutions will publish data. Data about budget, data about, for example, schedule of trams, buses, and so on. This is the first stage. It's for free, without registration. There are some examples like London and Barcelona, they are most advanced, and Dublin, they are most advanced with this open data initiatives. But the most important with these initiatives is the last point. Open data should be machine processable. Some cities, some government agencies, they're thinking, okay, let's publish some Word document, let's publish some PDF or ODP. This is the first age of open data. On the right-hand side, you see Open API. This is from London Transportation. It's also somehow human-readable document. You can see start point, from station, to station, destination, and so on. This is JSON format. You can also learn your machine, your parsers, to understand document. But this is very, very tough. And open data, open APIs means that all documents should be published with not human, machine processable way. By the way, this is our also client, our Red Hat client, London Transportation. So this example is from our API. Who else exposing API? I'm a fan of comics with my son. We will join tomorrow, not tomorrow, it's Saturday, we will join Comic-Con, which is organized in Poland, in Warsaw. So even Marvel exposing API for characters, so you can validate when it was published, in which series, and so on. DC doesn't have it. So Batman doesn't have it. Marvel, yes. If you like Avengers, you can use this API to validate, to check what's going on the Avengers side. A few years ago, there was a SOA initiative, mostly focused from my private perspective, it was mostly focused on internal exposing services. So it means, because it's for internal usage, it means it was focused mostly on reusability. So it's a big difference between SOA and API, because API usually means that I'm exposing my functionality, my company, to external world. So it means it should be very easy, it should be mostly used with JSON, not XML, not SOAP format, because a lot of mobile application is using it, it should be very thin format, not like a very fat XML format. When you are using JSON, when you are using REST services, it's very, very easy. I remember when I was on project in some small bank, they were exposing services in SOAP way. Definition of this service was like a 32, 36 kilobytes. So just definition. Can you imagine how big it will be, the data inside it? So even from test perspective, to generate test data for XML, you have to think about mutually exclusive fields, mutually exclusive values, and so on. In REST, should be as easy as possible. When we are thinking about API, when we are thinking about exposing API, there are some challenges. For example, when I will expose API, I don't know how many users I will have, how many developers will use my API. The same is with performance. I don't know how many calls I will receive. So this is some ideas. Am I ready for such a huge load? Am I ready? Does my data center is ready for it? Or when I will expose API, maybe I will earn money. So It means how to create free and paid API for different segments, for different users. So for unknown numbers of developers, I have to think about throttling, I have to think about authorization, about security, because when I receive 1,000 calls in a second, maybe my backend is not prepared well for such a huge traffic. So I have to be ready for it, and I have to think about how to protect my backend. Maybe there will be API gateway between my API and my backend. From 3scale perspective, we support those challenges. For example, we support application plan. Application plan is similar to billing plan. I can create application plan for free, for example, 10 calls per second. I can create first commercial plan between 11 and 100 calls. It will cost like €1 per month. Because I need to integrate with other security providers, I have to use open standards for authentication and authorization, like OAuth 2.0. So you can use countrywide identity provider. You could use LinkedIn, Facebook, just to authenticate user. So this is the very important part. And developer portal. Developer portal is for users, for my users, because when I will expose API, I need to teach people how to use my API. I will publish some documents, I will publish some movie. Okay, please download my documentation, or you can test it on my web page, my API. And there is a monetization module. So when I will earn money, I can publish this information. 3scale platform, our acquisition, from end of April, it's available on-premise. In the past, it was only SaaS version. Now we have two offerings. SaaS version, which means not complete, could be completely on the cloud, or on-premise version. And I will tell you a little bit about differences. Cloud version. It's mostly divided to two modules. First module is an API gateway. It's for traffic management, for security. It is between my API and between users of my API. So between developers, customer, and mobile application. When I will exposing my API, I will publish this definition to the gateway. And there is management module, which is responsible for definition API, for API contracts, for security, and this is completely on the cloud. So from our perspective, our SaaS model could be completely on the cloud, which means gateway could be on the cloud, and also management part could be on the cloud. But some people doesn't want to gateway located in cloud. So for them, we could offer API gateway on-site, on-premise. And this gateway will be installed in DMZ and will communicate with our management platform, which is located on the cloud. There are some different technologies for this API gateway. It could be installed as is, like a binary file. It could be Dockerized, so you can download Docker image and you can deploy on your Linux this API gateway. And then you can control it from the cloud, installation of API gateway. If you don't want to use API gateway, because when you are using API internally, you could use plugins. What means plugins? You see code plugin between application and management platform. This is like a small API gateway. This is library, which you can download from our portal, and you can include this library plugin into your application. So every single application will have a gateway, API gateway. There are different plugins for different languages. We have plugins for Java, .NET even, for Node.js, JavaScript, PHP, and Ruby. So you can use it. This is new trend, just to avoid API gateways. When we are thinking about on-premise version, we have different possibilities. This is our API installed inside your data center, which means everything is on OpenShift. I will not tell you anything about OpenShift. This is our platform as a service. So you can install OpenShift. For OpenShift, you need a Linux because it's for Docker, which includes Kubernetes. And everything is deployed on OpenShift. What means your backend API, API gateway, and management part is installed on OpenShift. Sometimes it's hard to install OpenShift cluster in DMZ, or sometimes it's hard even to create backend application on OpenShift. So for this, we have a different architecture. Backend APIs is installed anywhere, but API gateway is installed on OpenShift and the management part. And the third architecture, only management part is installed on OpenShift. And the rest, like a API gateway, could be installed on any Linux machine, RHEL, and could be Dockerized or could be installed as a binary file. API cast, which means API gateway. How it could be installed? It could be installed on OpenShift as like a first option. It could be installed as a Docker image or as a native. So it depends on your choice. It depends on your customer. You could use any possible architecture. Image and containers. From logical perspective, we have just two components, gateway and management part. From technical point of view, it's a little bit different. For example, on API gateway, you could use our Nginx, which means our API gateways. This is our dedicated engine for gateway, Nginx, plus OpenResty, plus our application APICast. You can download it as a Docker image, and you can run it in DMZ, for example, on physical or virtual or on RHEL. From management point of view, we have just two modules, system and backend. Then you can deploy it only on OpenShift as a past-ready application. When we are thinking about management part, we have to focus how many products we are using. 3scale was very close to open source initiative. They were using, before acquisition, a lot of open source technologies. And you can see even now, for example, MySQL, Redis, Sphinx. So they were using, and now we are using, like a cache, like a Redis, for storing responses on gateway side, just to respond faster. Sphinx as a search. You can search any values on MySQL or on Redis. Then we have a memcache, just to store any security information, just to speed up processing of our application. And then we have an APICast. So this is our architecture from very detailed perspective. This is a picture with technologies that we are using on it, like a Sinatra, Lua, and Nginx. So code of this application will be published in next Q. So it means like in 1 month, we will have maybe open source version. I cannot promise because we are working hard on it, but for sure in Q4, everything will be publicly available as an open source. When we are thinking about functionalities, any questions to this architecture? No. From functionality point of view, we have an access control, which means we can create any blacklist, whitelist, who is allowed to use our API, who is not. We can create list of APIs. We can also install any libraries which will help us to create such an XML protection, like against SQL injection, against XML tampering, and so on our gateway. This is part of our security. We can authenticate traffic inside our gateway you can secure your API on 3 ways. Just API key. You have to remember that traffic on API is always encrypted. We are using HTTPS, so any API key, you can correlate your traffic, you can correlate your customers, programmers, and mobile application via API key, or if it's not enough, you can use application ID plus API key, or in the most secure way, you can use your OAuth to 0. As a part of our API, there is a Red Hat single sign-on, so you can use Red Hat single sign-on as an identity provider or as an identity broker. So you can connect just single Red Hat single sign-on to your nationwide identity provider, to your Facebook identity provider or LinkedIn, and then you can authenticate any traffic with our gateway. API contracts and limits. What does it mean? It could throttle the traffic, so you can protect your backend against huge load, or you can count any call, and then you can invoice your customer. So this is part of our business part of our API management thing. So you can create many different thresholds, sub-thresholds, and sub-sub-thresholds. For example, first threshold, 10,000 calls per month, but someone could generate 10,000 calls in a second. So you could create sub-threshold, like a 500 calls per minute. So it means, okay, 500 calls per minute, maybe it's okay. And then you can create not more than 5 calls per second. It will protect your backend, and it will protect also your business. Analytics and reports. Everything is stored in database, so you can see, this is also some business part of our API management platform. You can see any reports, any analysis, so you can see which client, which application is the best, who generates the biggest traffic, who generates money, because you can see invoices, you can see how much money you earn on this API, on that API. On traffic, or on a dashboard, you can create traffic alerts. For example, my developer A is approaching 50% of acquired limit. And he will receive my developer alert as an email or SMS, and I, as administrator, will also receive such an alert. So this is just a part of managing of API as a provider. And developer portal, you could use Swagger definition to download your APIs, to test your APIs. This is our approach. And 3scale was one of the introducer of Swagger standard. In the past, a lot of companies were using, even now they are using Waddle and Rumble. But the difference is the Swagger is a JSON-based definition to JSON services, JSON API. In Waddle, you are using XML to describe JSON-based services. So we, as a Red Hat now, when after acquisition, we see that Swagger is winning on the market. So feel free to use Swagger definitions. And billing and payments. This is part of our SaaS offering. So everything is integrated with payment services, with Stripe or Braintree. So developer can pay for a commercial API, and even clients will receive invoices. As a part of management of invoices, you can approve invoice, you can approve payments, and so on. Any questions? No? In the internet, you can find any funny APIs like this about Chuck Norris. This is the api.icndb.com/jokes/random. So when you press it in the browser or in SOAP UI, you will see any funny jokes about Chuck Norris. So API is not just for business, it could be used for fun. I finished earlier, so.
Any questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So our next talk is from Lucian Caric, busting 0 days before being busted by them.